watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with us right here on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. We'd like to talk about security and other combinations within this country. I do have Ambassador Henry Mayega, Uganda's Deputy Head of Mission to Abu Dhabi, and he's here with me to talk about what happened on Saturday, October 23rd. There was a domestic terrorist act that was orchestrated around Komamboga ward that left, yes, another lady, Emily Nyeza. She is a 20-year-old waitress. She succumbed to her injuries. Others, Annette Chichoncho, Rose Nachito, and Peter Senyonga, actually survived, but they are grappling with various injuries in the health centers within this country. It was a callous and heinous domestic terrorist attack. But who is to blame for the laxity when it comes to security? Is it the security members or members of the public for not being extra vigilant? I do have Henry Mayega joining me right now. A very good morning, Ambassador.
Yes, good morning to you, and many thanks for...
It's been a while since we last interacted with you right here on Morning at NTV. Largely, how is the office at Abu Dhabi?
Of course, Abu Dhabi is busy at the moment because of the expo that is ongoing in Dubai.
Indeed.
And I'm happy to observe that Uganda is fully taking part in that expo.
Indeed.
I heard quite a number of negative things coming out of the social media, as usual.
As usual.
But in my view, and of course, according to what we have so far achieved from the expo, I think the signs are pointing in the direction that this country is going to benefit so much from that expo that is ongoing in Dubai. Yeah.
But what is not beneficial was the terrorist attack on Saturday that left the members of Komamboga ward reeling in shock. One person died, 3 others were injured. And the biggest question right now is, what is missing? Who is to blame for these laxities? Is it the security operatives that were not enforcing curfew guidelines? Because we do know this box joint shouldn't have been operating past 7 p.m. It was 9 p.m. when this incident happened. So who is to blame? The citizens for not being vigilant, or security operatives for being lax?
I think at this point, in my view, it is extremely difficult for me to blame anybody because, in my view, the security of the individual and the wider community is a shared responsibility. You as an individual, in fact, you are first and foremost your own keeper.
Indeed.
And therefore, you shouldn't lower the guard at any point in time, because there are dire consequences as a result of that. So at every other time, even here in the studio, you must be really very careful to ensure that I am safe, you are safe, and everybody who is around is actually safe. And so I would have even expected that I should have been checked when I entered here. Indeed. Because these are the times in which we are living. But going back to your question, yes, shared responsibility. In which sense?
Indeed.
The individual, the community, the government, the security forces, and so on and so forth. It's a shared responsibility. And therefore, each one of these segments of our communities has got its part to play in as far as maintaining security is concerned. Of course, we are in this lockdown, and the government came out. The president was very clear. The SOPs have been said quite a number of times, and they have been revised over time. Social distancing. There is a curfew in place which says that people shouldn't travel or shouldn't be outside their homes beyond 7 o'clock, unless there is a very big reason as to why somebody should be outside their homes, and so on and so forth. And therefore, you as the individual, why are you outside your home
at that time?
Why are you outside your home? I'm not saying, of course, our sympathies to those who were affected by the bomb blast in Komamboga. It was a heinous crime, in your words, that was committed on that day in Komamboga, and so on and so forth. So the individual, when we say that we shouldn't be outside our homes beyond 7 o'clock, it is incumbent upon us to ensure that that actually happens. And when it comes to the security forces, they're supposed to enforce what the president announced, because the president is not going to be, most of these places, all parts of the country, to ensure that people actually observe the SOPs, they observe the lockdown, they observe the curfew, and so on and so forth. So the security forces, yes, they have a role to play, but also, in my view, sometimes they are limited in terms of numbers. For instance, the international standard is that each policeman is supposed to watch over 500. Now, in our case in this country, one policeman looks after more than 1,000 people. And that is really not according to the standards, the international standards that they are spelled out. So yes, the security forces are supposed, if there are any, and I've been reading in the newspapers that some of them have actually been arrested as a result of not stopping these bars from opening beyond 7 o'clock in the evening. Yes, so be it, because, I mean, then somebody's not doing their job. And so each one of us is supposed to do our job. The government has come out very clearly that, look, the SOPs must be observed to the letter. There is a curfew, and is for purposes of us being safe. There are standard, I mean, we call them SOPs, that we should social distance, we should wear masks. And here in this studio, not wearing masks, I felt because I should wear it, but there is social distancing. So I feel I'm a little bit safe. So, in other words, the point which I'm trying to make is that there must be that sense of understanding that this is a shared responsibility. In the first place, the individual, you must ensure that you're safe. And how do you do it? I'm not saying that people should acquire guns in order to and all the time look over their shoulders, but it does no harm for you to look over your shoulders. For instance, if somebody who is strange comes into a place, a joint, as they are famously called in this country, he enters a bar, they have to be stopped and then checked. But here is a situation where these individuals, 3 of them, I understand, entered this joint with a polythene bag. There was nobody who tempted, and they pretended to be so friendly. And what happened is, of course, part of our history, that a bomb blast went off. So there should have been that checkpoint at that place to ensure that whoever enters is checked. If they resist being checked, then that's when you begin to become suspicious about it.
In the Ambassador, there is laxity on the part of the citizens who were there at the time when they shouldn't have been there because it was past curfew hours. But then on the part of security, here's why we are saying security was too lax. We had already been warned by the United Kingdom, October 14th. They have told us, Uganda, you should be you should be on your toes because we anticipate there could be a terrorist attack within your country. Even the French also came out and warned us. Don't you think the operatives not having acted in that regard to elevate the alert level so that Ugandans are more vigilant, doesn't that go a long way in saying it is the security that was lax in this regard, not elevating the alert levels so that Ugandans can be vigilant?
Of course, the British and the French as our friends, yes, they share security details and confidence and so on and so forth. But our security organs have actually been on top of the job for a very long time. Otherwise, the situation probably would have been much worse. So with or without the French telling us that these things would happen, or they were about to happen, is a totally different story. But our security organs usually are far ahead in terms of these things.
But by raising that level, doesn't that kind of awaken the citizenry?
Absolutely, absolutely. As friends, the French and the British were definitely doing the right thing. To share that kind of information. Of course, the security in this country is not going to come out and say that, yes, we have stopped these kinds of groups from endangering citizens of this country, and so on and so forth. But usually what happens in the security world is that information is shared from time to time. You know, and so our security agencies, I'm sure, must have had their own sources of information that pointed in the direction. They're always on the lookout. But as I've said, they're not going to police each and every place because of the numbers that we have. And I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't have done the job and that very to stop this kind of thing from happening. But we have been told before, for instance, by security agencies that they've stopped these kinds of things from happening in the past.
Made in Komamboga, October 8th, yes.
Absolutely.
The terrorist was shot.
Absolutely. And so, what are you doing outside? It's a very important question. What are you doing outside beyond 7 o'clock? It's a very important question, which you should answer, unless you're going to hospital, you're looking after somebody who is sick, or you're coming from the airport, or you have a flight to catch in the night, and so on and so forth. So, actually, movements will continue. But there are places where the concentrations of places where people are concentrated, like bars. Bars are not open.
But they are still operating because of the corruption
of course.
in security.
I don't want to say it's corruption because you see,
that's what Hassan Kassinje says.
You as an individual, yes, there must, of course, if Kassinje says it, because he's part of the police force in this country, and if he says yes, he's talking, I think, from a point of authority. But you as the individual, if you know that yes, there are security concerns. If the British have come out, the French have come out, and also our own security organs have actually been warning us for a very long time, from time to time, and pointing in the direction that yes, bad people may take advantage of what's happening. So it is better you actually stay home and don't go out beyond 7. So you as the individual, yes, you have a very huge responsibility. In my view, your responsibility is even much bigger than that of security forces because of their numbers. But because you know that danger may come in time and it may knock on your door, you don't have to take these things so lightly. Yes, the security forces have to do a job. We also have to do a job. The government has got to do a job.
Of course, the president came out and said these, in quotes, pigs shall be netted, and this criminality in the past has also been, you know, stopped in its tracks. That's what the president said on Sunday yesterday, and he said none of these activities shall go unpunished. But then, large unfair. Let's talk about the effectiveness of this curfew. We do have the 26 people who were murdered within the Greater Masaka area. All these murders happened past curfew hours. This attack on Saturday happened past curfew hours. Let's talk about the effectiveness of this curfew. Is it even effective to stop or handle crime?
No, I think the merits and demerits of a curfew can only be weighed if there is, in my view, a scientific research which has been done to see whether it has been effective or not.
Indeed.
But talking from a layman's point of view, about the effectiveness of the curfew as a measure to combat all sorts of things, including insecurity, and also making sure that people probably don't spread the pandemic faster than it would have been. I am of the view, personally, that probably the conclusion, an effective conclusion, a conclusion that is good enough, would come out of a research being carried out to see whether it has been effective. Yes, of course, Masaka area, Greater Masaka area, was affected by those Kijambi, as they were commonly known here, and it had begun spreading across the country, but the security forces again came and stopped of course in collaboration, because in collaboration with the wider communities where these things were happening, especially in Masaka, because the security forces were working together with the local authorities and also the individuals, the communities, to ensure that this thing is nipped in the bud. Otherwise, probably the situation would have continued up to now, or it would have even gotten much worse. But it didn't. Yes, it is bad, it happened, and many people got killed. And how callous were these people? Because I am aware that two, of course, MPs were arrested as a result of those things. I hope, and we can't comment so much about that because their cases are in court. But they were arrested in connection with those kinds of things.
Their hearing is today.
So, has the curfew been effective? In my view, probably, yes, it has been effective in terms of stopping the pandemic from spreading faster than probably it would have. And even security-wise, largely the country is secure. But of course, there are hotspots where these things happen, like in Masaka, like now the bomb blast that went off in Komamboga and so on. And those kinds of things will always happen. I mean, when you look, for instance, at the US, what is happening there? Because there are shootouts almost every week. And many people get killed as a result of those things, sometimes 3, sometimes 6. At one point in time, you remember, was it in, I think, in a state called, where over 54 people got killed as a result of somebody mounting guns in a hotel and killing them. So where was security in the US? And you should have expected that probably the US should be actually ahead of us in terms of keeping security. Yeah, absolutely. So in my view, yes, the curfew has worked, because I don't think that the pandemic has been spreading as much as it would have happened. And I don't think that the insecurities that we have in this country have actually gone to that level where we feel that it is extremely difficult even to move around to go and do, like we come here in the studio and so on, and people are accessing their places of work, traders and so on and so forth. So the curfew, in my view, yes. But we need to do probably some further research to find out exactly how effective it has been. It may not be 100% effective. And of course, I'm aware there are quite a number of discussions, conversations that are going on, and people are suggesting that probably the curfew is no longer effective and therefore it should be lifted and so on. But yes, we can look at that. And the president, of course, will look at that, plus together with his government, and then find out whether it is timely to lift the curfew. Those sentiments are extremely strong, that the curfew probably should be lifted by now.
I see. And you also second it and propose it?
I wouldn't say whether it's, because I again want to see that we are on top of the game, top of the job. And then I will get convinced that, yes, the curfew should go. But I think the conversation is lively and should continue.
All right.
So that we
Ambassador Mayega, help us connect the dots when it comes to this case. People Power, or the National Unity Platform Party, was connected to the attacks in the Greater Masaka region. The 26 people who were murdered, that saw the nating of Muhammad Sagirinya, that is Kawempe North, and also Alan Sewanyana, that is Makindye West. Then you do have this bomb blast that took center stage on Saturday, October 23rd. And you do have one of the eyewitnesses clearly stating and saying saying one of the attackers was wearing a People Power red shirt. Are we dealing with a local terrorist group, largely politically motivated, or are we talking about the Allied Democratic Forces who are actually hitting Uganda again? What are we talking about?
Of course,
local politics?
I just, well, I mean, the Segrinyas were arrested. Yes, that is for a fact. And we can't talk about the merits and demerits of that case because it is for competent courts of law in this country.
The connection.
But the connection is very interesting, and I think that's where the security should really do much more research or really intelligence to find out these connections where they actually point into a direction where conclusions can be made.
Indeed.
As to whether the bomb blast is connected to the NUP and so on and so forth, yes, that too, or local politics and so on and so forth, that too, I think can have, should attract as much conversation as possible. And of course, I want to go by what security agencies have been saying since this bomb blast happened the other night, including that they are not conclusive. They are, in terms of really describing, giving a description of the motive, the people involved, and so on and so forth, until they tell us that exactly, yes, somebody can even wear yellow and he comes and bombs. I'm not trying to protect anyone. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, people saw somebody in red before the bomb blast, and then there are those connections in Masaka, and the 2 MPs from NUP have been arrested. So those are very interesting connections, but I think we need to draw conclusions after the security agencies have done their job.
Even on Friday, you had an attack on a member of the UPDF. A major in Nasana municipality was attacked. They left a leaflet and they were saying the hunter is now being hunted. You've had Kawempe police post that was also attacked in that regard. Are we talking about a local rebel movement that is actually trying to fight this government?
Well, I again don't want to point directions. I mean, people will always try to do those kinds of things. We have lived with them since 1996, because those things which are happening, whether it's an attack on a UPDF officer or police stations and so on. In fact, in my view, the bigger insecurities have happened even before. These ones which we have at the moment are isolated incidents, and I don't want to point in the direction of a rebellion that is in the offing, but if it was, yes, let them try. Then they will face the full music of the law. But I don't want to imagine that these are rebel groups or really so intent on making sure, because I mean, hit and run shows that somebody is not terribly organized.
Indeed.
Otherwise, if they were, then it would have probably taken some formation of a bigger, wider group doing all manner of things.
I see.
But people will always try, and we have, as I've said before, we have lived with these things since 1986. People have been trying. They've formed rebel groups before. The insurgents in northern Uganda, there was FOBA in eastern Uganda, there were Chirimutu's group in Buganda and so on. In total, the last time I made a count of these groups that tried to do those kinds of things, I think we had reached something like 80.
You have another group that actually tried to attack a Zombo detachment. It was being manned by, that is Howard Openjuru, the leader of the Uganda Homeland Liberation Front.
He has been harvested.
He was arrested by the chieftaincy of military intelligence already. In that regard.
Absolutely. He was harvested.
And the president has come out so many times to say we shouldn't be issuing out bail to such individuals like Howard Openjuru, because after he orchestrated these attacks, he had been issued bail. So the president says if Howard Openjuru had been kept in jail without giving him bail, these attacks wouldn't have gone a long way in happening within Uganda. Let's talk about the deterrence, like the removal of bail. Will they go a long way in deterring such incidences from taking center stage, such terrorist attacks? When we remove bail, does that stop a terrorist from actually mounting, orchestrating another attack on this country?
Yes.
When we remove bail, does that stop a corrupt official from stealing 20 trillion shillings from our coffers?
One thing the citizens of this country should understand is that the biggest responsibility of the president, or any president of any country, but this particular president, is to maintain security in this country, to ensure that everybody is secure. That is the biggest role that he has. Before we talk about all other things, including coming here to the studio to come and talk about all sorts of things,
Indeed.
biggest responsibility to make sure that you and I are safe and the rest of the country is safe.
Removal of bail, doesn't it clamp down on
the president has been talking about, actually
it's
not a new conversation. The president talked about bail, I think about 7 years ago.
Yes.
And he wanted it only removed or staggered when it comes to capital offences. And what are the capital offences that we are talking about? I can mention maybe 2 or 3. One of them is treason.
Indeed.
The second one is to, okay, you can talk about corruption. The other one is rape or
murder
and all these kinds of things.
Indeed.
And here is a situation where you have just mentioned one person, Openjuru, who was actually given a bail, and eventually he went back to do the very similar things. In fact, he did even worse things than what he had done before. Now, and quite a number of other people have also been released, only to be found on the wrong side of the law, again doing this, even worse things. So the president had talked about staggering bail 7 years ago. This is not a conversation that started yesterday or last week or last month, and so or this year for that matter. It is something that has been going on for a very long time, because he, as a person who is in charge of the country and whose responsibility, biggest responsibility, is to make sure that this country is secure, has always been talking about staggering bail, not just simply to give anybody bail. But of course, the legal minds in this country have been right, because they've been saying, yes, the Constitution says so, that people are entitled to bail. So that's why the president now comes and he says, let's revise the Constitution and the laws that grant people just simply.
You have political and security experts who contend that the government vis-a-vis President Yoweri Museveni only tweaks or changes the constitution when it's in the favor of the National Resistance Movement Party. Removal of term limits, removal of age limit 2017, and now we are talking about the removal of bail. But then overall, this government has been told that we need to expedite a full overhaul of this constitution, and not just small tenets whereby the NRM feels like we need to be changing this and we need to be changing that. When it comes to whatever is playing in your book, yes, it is warranted and it will go through, but other alterations have been objected by the same government. Why?
That book called the Constitution is not cast in stone. Yeah, you can change it as and when you want it. I mean, you feel that you should change particular positions, I mean, portions of it.
Of course,
you think don't rhyme with what
you've had conversations on the Penal Code Act since time immemorial, that some of these laws were actually discriminative to Ugandans, but that's still, the Constitution hasn't been overhauled.
Number two,
to plaque out the Penal Code Act, but still we removed age limit, we are now removing bail.
Yeah, age limit, and of course that has ensured the continuity of a good leader in the country, who is President Yoweri Museveni. Right. That's why people keep electing him.
Yes,
but secondly, apart from saying that book is not cast in stone, the Constitution is not cast in stone.
Yes, but are we cherry picking?
The people should also understand, especially from the opposition, that it is President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM who are in government. When the opposition in future gets into government, they can change the Constitution or actually keep it the way it is, if they so wish. At the moment, it is President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM who are in government, and they feel that probably certain parts of it actually should be changed. And the Constitution, in my view, shouldn't be really a book that stays forever. I mean, of course, people have been citing the example in the US, that the Constitution of the US has actually been there for so many years, actually centuries, and people have not tampered with it. Fine, maybe it was a very good book, that's why they didn't tamper with it. Now, in our case, where actually there is rising crime, crime that takes people's lives, and this president has been very passionate about security of this country, and when he feels that actually the Constitution should be amended in order to protect the lives of this country, the lives of the people of this country, so be it, in my view. Yeah. So if others, for instance, from the opposition, feel that the Constitution is being changed as and when the NRM wants, yes, the NRM is in the government. Otherwise, if the opposition was in the government, I'm sure they would have also changed it, where they feel the politics probably is not going their way. Yeah, absolutely. But in my view, I think all the changes that have been made, I'm satisfied. There is nothing really that has been bad, that has been changed in the Constitution.
The opposition says largely many of these alterations were in favor of the NRM. There were so many recommendations to change the Constitution to check the powers of President Yoweri Museveni. His authority, the fact that he has influence in the legislature, in the judiciary, to just reduce his powers and so forth, but the president resisted all that.
I don't understand what they are talking about, because you see, when it comes, because we are in a business of political competition, if there are things, did they expect the NRM or President Yoweri Museveni to change the Constitution in their favor of the opposition? Yes. If the opposition were in government, they would have absolutely done the same thing, or even worse things, absolutely. So, for me, I don't see any academics that we should be talking about, and as far as changing those constitutions in the favor of the current government, because it is in the government. And the reason why people get into government is not only to run a country, but also actually to keep themselves there. If to some that doesn't click in their minds, then there must be a problem. Because we must talk facts. The fact of the matter is, when I get into government, Henry Mayega, and I become president, I want to keep myself in government for as long as I can. And how do I do it? I will do it by putting in place laws that will keep me in that power.
Consolidation of
That is what they call effectiveness of power.
Not
so
consolidation
that you must
of
keep
power.
The power. Well, you get it, you fight for it, get it, and then you remain with it. That is the essence of politics. I mean, look at a woman like Angela Merkel, who has been chancellor in Germany for so many decades. Maybe 3 or something like that.
Indeed.
And she has been elected over and over again, over and over again. And that's why I don't want lectures from the West many times. Because they've been talking about Museveni staying in power for a very long time. And so be it, because even in Europe, people have stayed. Margaret Thatcher was, I think, doing her third term when she was removed. Angela Merkel has been there for a very long time. I think it's over 20 years almost. Yeah. So, for me, yes, somebody gets into government. President Yoweri Museveni got into government. After all, this country actually had been run down in terms of security and in terms of economics. And then he revamps the country. He rebuilds the economy. He secures the country. Forget about these small things which are happening. Of course, it is bad that they are taking people's lives.
Indeed, yes.
But he has secured this country and brought it from far. And therefore, if he remains in the government and if I mean, for instance, the issue of staggering bail.
Yes.
I would imagine that even the opposition should be supporting him.
But opposition
because
is saying...
when people kill,
opposition is
all
saying,
of those people who were killed, for instance, in the massacre, I don't think that all of them were NRM.
You do
Most
have,
likely, some of them were even a NUP.
actually, opposition members are saying this is a consolidation of power move by the National Resistance Movement Party, in that they plan to witch hunt opposition members of parliament, opposition politicians.
That can't be accurate.
Ahead of 2026.
I wouldn't agree.
So that they keep them in jail so that they do not participate in that election.
I don't want to agree. I don't want to agree with that kind of assertion, because the fact of the matter is that yes, one, consolidation of power, yes, that happens in all countries. Even in the US it happens, in Europe it is happening. Parties want to consolidate themselves in power, to stay in power, to stay in control of countries for as long as they can. But why would somebody fear the staggering of bail if it's not about to commit a crime? All of those people who are against staggering bail, in my view, are potential criminals.
I see.
Because this president is talking about saving the lives of Ugandans. And that's why he's talking about staggering bail. So if you are a good citizen of this country, you should actually be in support of that. So that there are no murders, so that there are no Treasoners Acts, and so on and so forth.
No corrupt
so that there is no corruption.
Stealing
so
20 trillion shillings.
Yes, so that when somebody gets into court, is prosecuted and locked up in Luzira, it doesn't come out simply. So the opposition has been talking against corruption. They say that the NRM government has been so corrupt and so on. And the president is saying, okay, how do we fight corruption? One of the ways how we should fight corruption is actually to stagger bail when there are corruption cases that come up before the courts of law.
If you're wondering what we mean by the issue of bail, actually the Attorney General Chidio Wachiwanika proposes to actually tweak the Constitution a little bit. Article 23, Section 6B of the Constitution, so that it provides for a person who is grappling with the court case within the High Court but other subordinate courts, you should be held for more than 180 days or after the commencement of the trial, or when the DPP discontinues those proceedings. You should be held for 180 days. And to also change Article 23, Section 4B of the Constitution, and also Police Section 25, that would actually have warranted for you to be released after 48 hours if you hadn't been tried or adduced in court. But then they want the changes to translate to only 48 business hours. I'm still having this conversation with Ambassador Henry Mayega. Let's veer off to corruption. 20 trillion Uganda shillings is lost annually by these corrupt officers. Do you think the revocation of bail is one of those measures that will go a long way in actually doing away with this problem, even though President Museveni has been here for close to 40 years and corruption has largely persisted?
Absolutely. Corruption did begin with President Yoweri Museveni, because even when Jesus was here, you remember Judas Iscariot took money in order to betray Jesus. So corruption has been with us for a very long time. So it's not President Yoweri Museveni, like the opposition would want us to believe, that brought corruption in this country. It was there even before he came. So, but the important one is that how do we fight corruption? One of the ways of fighting corruption, yes, there are quite a number of pieces of legislation that have been put in place to combat it. There are also offices like the Inspectorate of Government and so on and so forth that are in place.
Do you think carrying out lifestyle audits will
bringing
help?
on board the bail staggering I think is an addition to the existing pieces of legislation and the offices that have been established.
The
in order to
IGT
combat
wants
corruption.
to audit the lifestyles of the officials in government. Will it go a long way in actually helping us resolve this problem? A lifestyle audit,
yes,
whereby we go to Mayega and we say Mayega receives 10,000 Uganda shillings a month, but Mr. Mayega is driving a 50,000 shilling vehicle. Such
Absolutely.
a lifestyle audit.
Yeah,
Will
yeah.
it go a long way?
I would find, because that touches actually on the moral fiber. I think she's talking about handling the moral fiber. How do we handle, because it's, again, fighting corruption is a shared responsibility of everybody. The individual, the churches, religious leaders, the government, and everybody has to be involved in that.
All right.
So if the IGIG is coming in to talk about the moral aspect of fighting corruption, I think she's just rhyming with exactly what the religious leaders have been talking about.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mayega. Let's give you a few seconds to talk to the nation, and please affirm that security is going to be largely corrected by members of security to ensure that we are all protected in the wake of these heinous terrorist activities.
Absolutely. I think, in addition to what you're saying, I think it's supposed to be a shared responsibility. All of us should be involved in making sure, ensuring that we are safe. When somebody, for instance, enters, we call them joints, make sure that there is a check. You check this individual, and if he behaves suspicious, then look out for a few other aspects that you can detect, and then do the needful.
Public vigilance should be
that
key.
will secure all of us.
Ambassador Henry Mayega, he is Uganda's Deputy Head of Mission to Abu Dhabi. Thank you very much for coming through and interacting with us.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. Looking forward to our next encounter. You're still watching Morning at NTV. Stephen Imbide is on the ground, largely ready to acquaint us. A very good morning, Stephen. What's the latest where you are?
You're watching Morning at NTV.